question for anybody who's looking to learn about SharePoint. And the question reads, learning SharePoint, I am a .NET developer, and I would like to learn SharePoint. I would really appreciate if someone could guide me in the right direction. Thanks a lot. So please, panelists, and anyone else who has any input, please let us know how you can go about learning about SharePoint.
This is Paul, guys. I would say what I've noticed is what could be the most beneficial for a .NET programmer that wants to get into SharePoint is to learn the functionality of the out-of-the-box functionality very well, because there are so many opportunities to create solutions out of the box where if you didn't know all that functionality, you might, spend a lot of time and money writing a custom solution. And it sounds like a very obvious thing, but because the feature set is so rich and so deep, it actually takes a real, concerted effort to learn all those things. Paul Galtman actually has a pretty interesting presentation in some materials called Mastering SharePoint, and he actually talks about sort of a proposed path for doing that. And one of the things that I think is important is to look into getting some of those certifications. There's a few of them for 2010 now, and whether or not you think they're valuable, for your career, at a minimum, it's going to sort of touch on all of the different features in SharePoint. So that's my 2 cents.
This is Carlos. I'll go ahead and chime in for Akil. In terms of development, I would recommend downloading the SDK. The SDK has a lot of examples on how to do various things within SharePoint. So there's nothing better than seeing code and then having someone have already comments and things in place to kind of guide you through what each bit is doing. In addition, there's a website dedicated to SharePoint development. It's like SharePoint Developer Center. It's on MSDN, which gives you a lot of beginning exercises and things like that on how to get started with SharePoint development. And like anyone who's ever started in any development, if you're familiar with .NET, you can pretty much get familiar with SharePoint Object Model. It's just a matter of semantics. So typically your first application would be a hello world application where you're reading data from a list. There's certain caveats too to keep in mind, Akil. You need to look at disposal patterns for SharePoint development. That's very important. Robert Lamb has a blog on it, and now they have a SP disposal checker tool as well. But you want to make sure when you're playing within SharePoint, there's a lot of unmanaged code that results in memory leaks and things like that. So be very careful when opening webs in SharePoint. That's my only advice for you. And then don't dispose of spcontext.current.web or .site. So outside of that, good luck, and the SDK should help.
I'm actually not a .NET developer, but I think it's a good suggestion to try to participate in your local SharePoint community, like maybe a SharePoint user group, if there is such in your town. We don't have Akil here to ask, but when this advice is finally received, that I think is worth saying. I know Mark Miller also beats that drum pretty consistently from nothingbutSharePoint.com. And so that's a site I would also visit, the nothingbutSharePoint.com site. There's a lot of user group activity there and even some developer resources.
Thank you for listening to a highlighted segment of SharePoint ShopTalk. Join us live and ask your own questions every Thursday, 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. You may also join our group on LinkedIn at SharePoint ShopTalk. That's our group name. And we hope that you can join us. We look forward to the continued sharing of SharePoint knowledge.